Hello, storytellers. My name is Donovan, and welcome back to another episode of Crossroads, the Storyteller's Journey, where we dive deep in on storytelling with creators and artists and filmmakers and directors and all sorts of different artists here at the Artist Apparel community. I'm so excited for today's episode. We have a street photographer and journalist on the podcast from Tucson, Arizona. I'm very excited to welcome David J. Del Grande onto the podcast. We have a great conversation. We talk about taking the road less traveled and just doing something different with your art and with storytelling. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear the way that this conversation pans out. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to share this with your friend, with a storyteller, somebody that just resonates with you on the level of what storytelling is, and maybe a fellow photographer, a fellow filmmaker, whoever you interact with in your community. I would love it if you shared this with them, because in reality, that's what Artist Apparel is all about. We really just want to grow this community so that we can help encourage more artists and bring more, just powerful and moving art onto the scene. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to past me that recorded with David on this great conversation that we had, and I hope that you enjoy and have a great week. All right, ladies and gentlemen, storytellers, welcome back to another episode of Crossroads, the Storyteller's Journey. Today I'm joined with a street photographer and journalist from Tucson, Arizona. He is a great guy. I've been talking with him for 5 to 10 minutes now. We're just vibing, enjoying our time. But yeah, he is a very, very talented journalist and writer, but also turned street photographer, and that's a passion that he's found himself in. So we're really excited to invite David J. Del Grande onto the podcast today. Thank you so much for being here, David.
Thanks so much, Donovan. It's been good to chat, and I'm excited to chop it up.
Yeah, let's chop it up, bro. I know
Yeah.
that you're a podcaster yourself, so you know the vibes, you know how it goes, and I'm really excited for this. So, what I really love to start with all of my storytellers that I bring on the podcast is just give them the most general, the most broad question that you could probably ever be asked. But I'm gonna go for it, and we'll see how you respond. So basically, what does storytelling mean to you in your creative mediums? So both in journalism and photography, what does storytelling mean to you in those mediums?
Storytelling to me at this point are love letters to the present, and meaning just when I started this particular journey, journalism to start, and now street photography, it's been a second chance at life for me. So every day, my work is based in gratitude of having the opportunity to tell stories and be in a position where I'm thriving instead of surviving. And even if I'm tackling a subject, whether it's street photography or being a freelance reporter, um, sometimes the subject matter is difficult, but it's really a great opportunity for me to kind of reflect back the world that I get to see today.
So a lot of what storytelling is to you is really just capturing what life has to offer, and using those aspects of life to offer something back to the world, back to life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I've definitely struggled throughout my life, and having an opportunity to really be a creative professional has been quite the blessing. And it's been a bumpy road, but it's something that I wouldn't trade for the world. And
Yeah.
gratitude is definitely like the foundation of what I do, and how I storytell.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, no, gratitude is a lost feeling and a lost emotion in a lot of society in today's day and age. And I think that what you do as a street photographer is so unique in the telling of gratitude. I think it's really unique because you're going out and capturing the lives and the community, and you are able to see the world differently as you take different paths. I saw on your YouTube you have a video about taking the road less traveled, and how that is much of what has inspired you as an artist and as a photographer, street photographer. Because you don't want to take the same road each day. You want to try something different, because you'll get something different from the world. The world will offer you something new, whether it be seeing a new face that you've never seen before in Tucson, or seeing how in the video you mentioned, like seeing a development being built that you wouldn't have otherwise known was there because you just took the road that you've always been on. So how has taking the road less traveled really inspired your photography and your art? You mentioned it in the video, but I would just love for the listeners to kind of hear, straight from the source, just to hear what that's all about for you.
Absolutely. The theme is actually based on a book that's kind of, I guess I could call it my Bible as someone who's not a religious person. It's a self-help book written by Scott Peck, and it talks about kind of doing a difficult thing first, and it's about self-love. And I've kind of taken it to a different level of, being a skateboarder in the New York City area as a kid, really the benefit of kind of finding these little nooks and crannies in New York City streets. I learned that being on a skateboard, and I always applied it to my journalism and to my street photography. So it's just a healthy habit that I've got into. Like, no matter where I'm living in the world, say my street is, First Street, in New York City. It's like, I'll get off on a subway stop before then, or I'll take a left turn before whatever city street I'm living on in Tucson, and just kind of explore. And that sense of curiosity and exploration just offers me a larger canvas. And it also, it's more exciting to just find these like little hidden treasures, especially in an artistic community like Tucson. You turn down a different corner and someone's lawn is completely littered with metal art. And always in the back of my mind, I think, oh my God, if I didn't make this early left, I would have never seen this. And that sense of curiosity, that sense of wonder, I want to bring to my art, and kind of, just kind of put a stamp on Tucson and or wherever I'm living, and just say, like, look at this beautiful little corner that I would have never discovered if I didn't have this sense of curiosity and wonder when I'm out working.
Yeah. Do you, that's amazing. I think that it's something that a lot of people need to hear, being present and not necessarily, living life the same every day, like really going out of your way to try a different thing. And a lot of the great inventions were found when they weren't even looking for it. And which is really cool in itself. But as you're taking the road less traveled and you're putting these new experience that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten into art, into street photography, is that the idea that you want to convey to the audience that you display your art to, your photography to? Do you want for your audience to be inspired to take the road less traveled? I'm guessing yes, but is that like a huge influence in your art?
Yes, yeah. I think you're spot on, and you're catching that vibe of, I came from a place of almost being homeless about 10 years ago, before I decided to move back to Tucson and go to university to study journalism, which turned into a street photography passion that I'm growing into a business. So knowing that I had enough agency and I had enough opportunity from people that were supporting me, taking this kind of like road less traveled and taking charge of life, and then also at the same time during that bumpy road being really appreciative and present and grateful for that opportunity, anyone can apply to their lives. And you don't have to take the road less traveled and become the next Jay-Z or the next iconoclast in film like John Cassavetes or something like that. But you could mold your life into a space and to an existence that you're excited to get up in the morning, and you can't wait for that next project and the next turn down, a dusky road when you're doing your art. And that's something you can apply, anyone can apply to their lives no matter what they're doing.
Yeah.
And, I'm pretty much living proof of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm up way before sunrise, and I can't wait to get out into the field.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's just such an inspiration to me. Yeah, as I said earlier, it's something that I feel like a lot of people need to live by a little bit more. I had a class at university where one of my professors actually told us, in the business world, so I'm a business major.
Okay.
In the business world, the way that you network is you've got your friends, and then outside of your organic following or your friends, how are you gonna make your mark on the world? Social media is a huge way that people do that nowadays, but taking the road less traveled and walking back from your class a different route could mean you bumping into your next best friend or your business partner, or could turn into you bumping into Jay-Z. He could be on campus.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but but it's really just a life lesson in itself. And I think that what you've been able to do in your photography to this point is really amazing. And I know a lot of street photographers are, similar in the way that they want to portray life in a way that is new, and the world is always offering you something new. But you have to be the one that takes the initiative to step out of your comfort zone, to step out of that route that you've been taking home every day, and really find the new thing, or really find what the world is offering you that day. So yeah, that's amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey from journalism to photography. I know that it looks like from what I've read in some of your posts and some of your articles, editorials, it seems like you became a journalist and you would write stories, and you kind of felt obligated to take photos,
Mm-hmm.
to not obligated, but you had to take photos to accompany those, because visual mediums, tell a lot, which is why I do this podcast in video, because people prefer to see my beautiful face. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Yeah. So what did that journey look like, moving from journalism to street photography? I know you still got your foot in the journalism category, and you love it because your work is amazing. Your writing is so captivating, it's legit, man. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey.
Right on. Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's an element.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's an element of my creative work that I'm really, really passionate about and really excited about. When I was a professional journalist, you were expected to be able to take a passable photo, because if you're whether it's a newspaper in print or not, you need a lead photo, especially for the online version. So you need something. And I was one of the singular people going through the journalism community here in Tucson that could write, an award-winning story and take an award-winning photograph. So my skill set was always kind of equal, and that was unique. And as I left the journalism industry as a full-time reporter, because it just wasn't a good fit for me long term when it came to the politics and long-term growth and where I think I can take my voice, I knew that, like, keeping my writing strong and keeping my photography strong was just going to be natural. So I needed to find platforms in order to convey that story. And that's really been an exciting part of having the freedom of being a freelancer and someone running a small business, is that I get to take on whatever assignments, or I get to cover whatever I particularly want to, from a lens of as objective as you possibly be as a human being, and creating also a sense from the visual aspect of hyper reality, because documentary work, obviously I respect it and I love it, but there's always a little bit of sense of mystery in the photograph work I do and the video work I do, because it just seems to be an accurate representation of what I experience when I'm in the field.
Okay, so your experience is really what you want people to see.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Yeah, that's I think that transitioning from one form of storytelling, because journalism is, you're telling a story. Telling your story in that way to telling your story through photography. It seems like there could have been some sort of like, I don't know, was there any sort of dissonance in that transition between the two? Because I know you're still like, you're still writing, you still like are in that space, but that transition, was it fully out of passion for photography? Like you found yourself in photography, like you found what you loved, you found that your experiences were valid, and your new experiences like that the world was offering you could be conveyed to the world, like taking the road less traveled. So was that transition, did it have any sort of dissonance to it, or was it pretty much smooth and like into the freelance category? Because I know that freelancing is difficult. You have to be your own boss, and that means not only doing the craft itself, but also finding the people to work with, discovering whether or not you want to work, promoting that piece, adding it to your portfolio. It's just like it's a whole conglomerate of responsibilities that a lot of freelancers get tired of and end up working for an agency or end up creating their own business. Was that dissonance there? And if so, how did you combat it, or did you just kind of go with the flow? It's just an interesting thing for me with that transition between two art forms.
Yeah, I always, it's easy for me to separate the art of journalism from the industry, and my focus and going to a street photography focus as a professional was more, in tune with staying with the art of journalism, because the industry didn't have a future for me. And I still know a tremendous amount of people who work in that industry and love and respect them. It's not anything against that, but for the stories that I needed to tell and how I needed to communicate through my art and my gifts, really, it was far beyond what the journalism industry could offer me. And it was difficult. Yeah. When I left the industry, it was tremendously difficult. I definitely lost some friends and people I thought were a lot closer to me than they actually turned out to be. And yeah, it's an interesting experience leaving that industry, because at least as a full-time reporter, as a freelancer, you're looked at differently, and the grind of everyday journalism is, kind of like a badge of honor that you wear when you're working in the industry full time. But the limitations were something I needed to break away from. I wasn't a good fit for it, but all the skills that I gained from being in it, I got to take to my own artwork and my own form of storytelling, and that was was really the gift.
Yeah.
And for me, the fun part of it is just, life, a big part of life is learning what's not good for you, and that particular field full time was not good for me. Like, if you're not testing to see what doesn't work, how do you know that you're like really stressing yourself as a professional?
Yeah. Because you can do all of the work to try to find what does work, but figuring out what doesn't work is really gonna bring you to what does work quicker. If you really like visual mediums, you try painting or you try digital art, and maybe that's not good for you. Oh, I'm not good at drawing, so let me move to graphic design, go to Illustrator and Photoshop, and you realize, oh, that's a little bit better for me. Then you find your niche within that graphic design realm, and like it's just that the journey that you take from that first this doesn't work to the I love what I do is what formed you as a storyteller. It's really what brings your work uniqueness. That helps you stand out from the people that you're quote unquote competing against in this realm. It's funny because like we want to be the ones that are supporting each other every step of the way, and which we do. I love that's what I live for, is supporting artists and supporting storytellers. I really find that it just I just love it. But it's just amazing to see, like, how your journey has gone from one thing to another, and you found what works and what doesn't, and you still, love journalism, but you've created this new business with your freelance work. So that's amazing. I had some questions, right?
Shoot.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you went to school for journalism,
Hmm.
and that's just, was it just because you liked, covering stories, or what made you want to select that major whenever going to school?
When I decided that I was going to become a journalist and go to school for that, I had been reading about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for about 10 plus years, and
Hmm.
my minor in university was conflict reporting in the Middle East, because that was my original plan
Okay.
when I um, stepped into the journalism world. Was that I was going to go to probably Lebanon and start covering the Middle East in a real way. So that gave me some perspective of what life is really like when I delved into that at a university level. And really, I felt like at that point, if I could get into the journalism industry and create a difference and tell real stories, that creating some sense of peace, at least in that conflict area, could have a ripple effect. And
Hmm.
sadly, when I got within the corporate journalism world and got pretty close to, papers that were big enough and recognizable enough, I felt like I would not have been able to do the work that I wanted to do in a real way. There was too many limitations when you're working
Hmm.
with an industry. So that was what
So you just
originally.
wanted to be a free spirit in
Yeah,
that way?
yeah, and just tell an
Okay.
accurate, honest story. And I think from what I've seen, as you climb the journalism ladder, that becomes more restrictive unless you've kind of branched out onto your own. There's the Glenn Greenwalds of the world that you win a Pulitzer working for places like the Guardian, and then you branch out and you do the Intercept, and you have an angel investor, and then your voice is strong enough where you're unbound. And
Mm.
that's an outlier within the industry. So if you're trying to do that work, you better have the chops of Glenn Greenwald, or you're going to be constrained by the expectations of corporate journalism, especially if you're
Mm.
traveling around the world.
So, what it comes down to is you just don't fit into the box, into the corporate box.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There was
Yeah, that's
that.
that's something that I'm like already struggling with a little bit, because I'm like, whenever I leave university, like, I'm gonna keep this community running, keep this going, keep this podcast going, the conversations, because I love them. But in terms of my day job, I'm like, I don't know if the corporate world is right for me, because I'm just such like I'm not cookie cutter, man. I got like, I'm outside of the box, dude. I gotta find, I don't know, just find something that, and in the corporate world, it's great that people find like purpose in it, but I just feel like the purpose is, life is just so vast and so big, and this world is so big, and there's so many people, that it's just like, how on earth am I meant to live in an office and not touch the lives of people outside of my immediate, like, people that I know, my immediate social presence. It's like, I don't know, which is why I've created this in some sense. So yeah, you came from journalism, go to street photography, and you've used your photos in your journalism. How have you learned to seamlessly integrate I think this is what your podcast is about, in some ways, because everybody listening, David actually has a podcast called Streets Photog Podcast, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that before I ask the question regarding it. So where can everyone listen to it, and what inspired it, and what is it about?
Well, when I transitioned to just really focusing on street photography, I was always writing anyway. So I figured,
Uh-huh.
well, you know, a picture tells 1,000 words, but I already have the 1,000 words, so I may as well put them both out. And the
Yeah.
Streets Photog podcast is just I'm marrying those two things. Like, it already exists, so I may as well just put it out. Sometimes it's a video work, or sometimes it's just me reading a script or reading a story while I'm out in the field freelancing, or just doing my typical street photography work. The podcast can be found on major platforms, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and it's just, at some point I'm probably going to integrate different journalism elements, like interviewing people and sound pops and something. Well, I still use sound pops right now, but interviews and all that. So there's definitely places for it to expand, but I'm already doing the writing when I'm out in the field taking the photos, and I wanted to be able to share that because it also adds context. I mean, I can take kind of a sad photo of someone who's homeless on the Tucson city streets, but if I've written 1,000 words about it, that gives context and tells you about what that interaction is, it's going to have that much more impact. And that's more of a body of work that you would see in an exhibition. I mean, you can go see someone like Diane Arbus, and like, you can see the work, or you can think about her last project that was published after she passed, and without the context of what that story was, yeah, they're beautiful photos, but if you add the writing to it and the background story, it just has that much more impact and depth. And that's the point of launching this podcast.
Okay. How far are you into it right now?
I started it in December.
December.
Yeah, and I try to publish, I at least publish once a week, so that's just like the typical like episode of, like, whether it's like my freelance work, or whether it's just having a random interaction with someone that I feel is a compelling story, and I get a compelling photograph. That's going to be part of the episodes. And then I try to get at least one or two more recordings, and those are usually based on books that I'm reading. I read a lot, and that definitely impacts my work as a creative. And yeah, I mean, if you're a writer, you should be reading. So it's kind of like a book of the week. Like, hey, I'm reading this, and this is impacting me. And it's really serendipity. I'll be reading something, and then I'll go out shooting. I'm like, oh my goodness, like that. I needed to read that before I went out, and now it's applying exactly to the story I'm communicating. So sharing that, and then giving authors some shine, which isn't going to hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool process.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's the podcast itself sounds like a very unique just type of vibe. Yeah, everyone go listen to the Photog podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on Anchor as well, which is where I record as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. Any photographers listening to this, I mean, I love for what's it called? I love for all mediums of creativity. I love for filmmakers and photographers and actors to be listening to the podcast, but obviously it's going to be more enticing for a photographer to listen to this one because that's just what you do. So yeah, definitely take a listen to that and support him in that way, because obviously you put a lot of work into it. Just, I mean, you're really just, sounds like you're just living, and when something comes to you, you just share it. Mm-hmm. That seems like what it is, and that's a beautiful thing, because you're just living in the present and asking questions about the world and just discovering and getting insight from these authors on these books, and going out and then realizing that it's all around you. Exactly. Which, if everyone were to just open their eyes and look, you would find so many beautiful things and be inspired by so many different things. But yeah, you've got that podcast. You're releasing a book in October of this year of 2022. And you were telling me that you're still trying to figure out exactly what you want the subject to be about. But why don't you share with Crossroads, with the listeners of Crossroads, just like what that means to you? Because you have your new publishing company. It's Grande Publishing. Yep. And I'm guessing you're going to be publishing through that.
Yep.
But What does that book look like to you, and what inspired you to say I'm gonna publish this book? Because I feel like, people are like, I want to write a book, but like obviously you've got a time frame on it, and you've got a publishing space, a way for you to do it. So it's a little bit more intentional. What does that look like?
It's an expansion of starting this publishing company, which has always been a dream for years and years, and it kind of took off during COVID when I got a little bit more focused. And so this will be my second book, and this one is probably just going to be, not just, but it's going to be a street photography book and a little love letter to Tucson and what it means to me. I've been back in Tucson for about 10 years, and my life has changed dramatically for the better. And I want to be able to communicate that message. So it's going to be a street photography book with a lot more writing than my first book, and I just want to communicate that message of how special this place is to me, and having that intention of, yes, I have this work, but I'm going to make sure that it culminates into a physical asset, a physical artifact. And that's a time capsule of my life and of the life I share within this community. That's really important to me.
Yes, it's not no Snapfish book, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's awesome.
It's self-publishing for sure, but it's I'm definitely wanting to expand that, and potentially in the future the greater goal is to bring other people into the fold that may not fit into that corporate mold, and that need a home and need to express themselves in a way that they normally wouldn't be able to do by trying to get a book deal or work within the parameters of a typical publisher and a typical artist. Like, I want to be that home that I wish I had when the journalism road got really bumpy and it seemed like I was just this kind of island. Like, I kind of want to be that for creatives, because it's hard to be an individual, and it's hard to stand on your own 2 feet, and I'm fortunate enough to have had resources outside of it to give me support. But yeah, I mean, if you have a professional resource in a real way, I mean, that's gold.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy to see, like 10 years ago when you're when you're on the bumpy road, of life. You probably wouldn't have like zoomed out and seen yourself in where you are now. And and it's really cool because a lot of other storytellers are in the same place. Just feeling kind of down on their luck, feeling like their art isn't being seen by people. It's not being appreciated by people. And that's what I want to solve with this platform. It sounds like it's exactly what you want to solve as well for photographers and for journalists, and just that combination, which I think is a great thing. When you see where you came from and where you are now, it really just inspires you to want to change that for other people, and have them accelerate that process of growth and regeneration of encouragement, and just it's a selfless thing. I was talking to I interviewed a photographer. I'm not a photographer, a filmmaker last week named Dan Brothers, and he finds joy when he creates. He finds joy in helping others and really just seeing others successful. And that's what I like to do. It seems like it's what you like to do. It's a general idea that I feel is really important in just the storytelling realm, but especially in mediums where your art can be seen or heard, and you just feel like it's not getting anywhere. But just seeing that you came from, 10 years ago, you were in a rough patch in life, and now you're here where you are now. You have your own publishing company. It's really inspiring, and I think that a lot of people can take that inspiration, hold it with them, and start their own dream, because that was your dream for a while. So I'd love to see you interact and collaborate with some other photographers, some other street photographers, and I mean, whatever it might be, photography, whatever mediums you want to support on that, publishing, just people wanting to write a novel, whatever it is. I think that it's a really selfless act to do, and I commend you for just kind of taking the step and doing it yourself, and then realizing, I want to bring others in on this too, because it's an important thing, and everyone's got something different to offer. It's really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, it's it's about forming that sense of community and offering value to creative people, and I definitely came across that in the journalism world. I was a non-traditional student, and there was a lot of people that were fresh out of high school and going through like the bumpy roads of going through university and possibly not fitting into that mold. And I'd kind of been I already had trials and tribulations outside of university, and I always wanted to offer insight to say, dude, it's going to be okay. Like, trust me. Like, I know this is heavy right now, but just like take the next first step and like make sure you take care of yourself. I mean, even just as a person or as a professional. And that was the main crux of wanting to launch this publishing company, is that in the future, I want to be that home base for people who are like, man, I just like, I can't fit into this really weird box or in these limitations. Like, where can I go with my art, no matter what that art is? I want to offer that to the people who need it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Switching gears,
Yeah.
we've got yeah, of course, dude. It's really, I mean, it's like I said, it's a selfless thing, and I think that it's just, I don't know. It seems like you're passionate about people. Being a street photographer, you have to be passionate about people and passionate about telling their story. Before I get into your NFT photography, I was curious. I mean, street photography. I probably would have gone over this earlier in this episode, but it's really you're a vessel for someone else. Like, you're telling someone else's story through your photos, or a building story of the stories inside of that. If you're taking a picture of a Publix, or I'm sorry, a Walmart or whatever like that. Publix is in Florida, and it's literally not anywhere else in the country, so nobody knows what it is.
Hey, I'm like,
but it's amazing. They have great subs.
Nice. Okay.
But yeah, they're the pub subs. But yeah, taking a picture of a Walmart, and maybe it's an abandoned Walmart or an abandoned gas station or something. Understanding for the gas station, like, so many people have come through there, filled up their gas, gone into the convenience store, gotten what they need, talked to the clerk, been on their way back to their road trip adventure. And you're taking a picture of this abandoned gas station. I guess this is a hypothetical. You've probably done it before, but taking a picture of this abandoned gas station, and you're telling the stories of every person who's walked through that place in that place's lifetime. Do you feel any sort of like responsibility when it comes to these photos and telling someone's story? Because obviously you want to do it justice, and you want to be true to that person and to your art as well, because you don't want to have to change your art for someone else, because it's yours and no one else can come up with it at the end of the day. But what's that responsibility look like and feel like in the street photography realm when you're capturing the lives of others?
I think the ethics that were kind of drilled into my head and almost were an important focus of my life before I became a professional journalist, I applied to my street photography, and there's just a sense of responsibility where sometimes I take part in a scene when it comes to street photography, even though it's probably not on camera. But at the same time, like, there's an ethics to it, that like there needs to be kind of a sense of mystery, I think, to keep an audience captive, for sure, when it comes to visual manifestation of a scene. But yeah, I mean, there's an ethical, moral obligation that I feel when it comes to accuracy and to honesty. But there's always a sense of beauty that I see no matter where I am. Because I see the potential in ruins, because it's like the phoenix rising. Like, there's always tomorrow, and there's always now. Like, you can change around, and having an interaction with say someone who's destitute, and maybe it just turns a light on and they get to turn around, or you're I don't know, I get to see beauty every day. And I feel like I'm fortunate that I get to see beauty in things that most people would either look away from or think the opposite. because there's always a hidden potential in destruction. I mean, that's the yin and yang. That's the balance that we need to have. There's no utopia on the human level. So if you're seeing that balance and you're understanding that there was once a lively space in this abandoned gas station, but now it's decrepit, like you don't know the next time that someone's going to pass by it and they're an entrepreneur and they know that they can revitalize that space. So if you can kind of add a little bit of magic and a little bit of life to things that are passed on, I think that's an ethical responsibility to your community to see that. And I feel like really fortunate that I see the world that way. And
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the focuses.
That's I mean, got deep there, bro.
Yeah.
But it's something I've always thought about with street photography, like the ethics of it. I'm like, taking a picture of someone who's maybe homeless or someone who just lost their job, or I mean, obviously you don't know these things. Like you maybe just see someone sad, but you're just capturing what life is like through your eyes. And what I love that you can do with your journalist background is you can take that story that someone might otherwise see, someone might otherwise look away from or see as something dark, or they don't want to touch it, or dirty, or whatever it might be, and you can add that written medium to it and really give someone the context that they're looking for to understand what compelled you to take the photo, what was happening at the time, what the interaction seemed and looked like. And you can bring in that fact that there's always room for growth in someone's life, no matter where they're at, no matter whether their roots are rotting and starting to go away and just starting to die. There's always going to be that one root, that one part in someone that is going to have the opportunity to grow. And because someone's got the seed planted in them and their roots start to grow, but then nothing happens and it starts to die. There's always that one thing that can revitalize them, and I like that you see it in that way. And yeah, I'm sure that a lot of other street photographers are similar in the way that they capture things that are darker like that. But I love the way that you put it, in a sense that you just really want to capture the beauty in everything, the beauty in the hard times, because you've seen the hard times and you know what it looks like now, and you know that those hard times just built you up. So being that you can capture the world in that way, it's a really great thing. I find myself just sitting here on like an hour of the podcast, just like complimenting whoever I'm talking to. Just like, yeah, you're so amazing. But it's seriously, that's exactly what it is. That's what I love about, talking to people about their art is just that you have so much passion behind your work. And that passion has kept you going these 10 years and has made you create your own Grande publishing, and it's really just brought you to the place where you are now. So I commend you for that, my good sir David. I commend you for that, bro. It's really amazing. But yeah, we'll start to wrap things up, but I did want to hear about your NFT photography, because you are coming out with a one of one. The NFT space is newer. There's a lot of weird conversation about it. People are like, this is stupid. People are like, this is beautiful. This is art. Obviously you're going for it. I've done some research on NFTs. And we don't really have to brief everyone on exactly what it is, just because I don't think that's not what this podcast is all about. They can go somewhere else for that. They can listen to Gary Vee or something.
Exactly.
Like that. But yeah, so what compelled you to want to put out your own NFT? And is this photograph, can anyone see it anywhere right now, or is it like in a vault, and you're going to be putting it out, in this one of one, like non-fungible token?
Yeah, speaking of Gary Vee, it's kind of funny. That was the person who inspired me to kind of get curious about that world. And it's been really an inspiration to see where that world is going for photographers and for creative people. That sense of ownership, that smart contract that is going to potentially feed people indefinitely as that non-fungible token continues to sell. and grow in worth as you build up your brand and you build up your place and your creative art. I'm just, yeah, the photo is available. It's on my Instagram and it's also
Okay.
on OpenSeas, but it hasn't been minted yet.
Available
Yeah,
for purchase.
exactly.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
yeah, it's a street photograph I grabbed in Nogales, Arizona, right near the border, and I've spent a decent amount of time going back and forth, between Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora. It's a major port in Arizona, definitely a place
Okay.
of contention when it comes to journalism and politics. And I
Mm-hmm.
covered it a little bit as a reporter, and then really delved in more as a street photographer. And the the photo itself is a gentleman who I noticed when I was down there one afternoon, just kind of circling the port, and there was, I don't know, he had this sense of, he was regal. So I dubbed the photo King of Nogales, and I think it's just his block that he happens to just kind of hang out in, and he's in a walker, and it's right in front of a popular mural that's on the Arizona side. And I feel like it captures a community that is largely misrepresented when it comes to the journalism world and it comes to the world of politics. And there's, again, we're going back to the theme of beauty, of there is a beauty in our differences, whether it's cultural, political, and all that stuff. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like one of the focuses of my art should be, or is, the fact that we live in a world that's largely gray, and it's not black and white. It's not as easy as chopping up politics or a belief system into yes or no, right and wrong. And covering communities that are largely misrepresented as an artist, I think will continue to be a focus of the work I do long term. And jumping into the NFT space, I felt like it was appropriate to go into this new place, this new medium, and show street photography, a little bit of street art in it, because that's also part of my foundation as a young man. So yeah, I mean, getting into the NFT space has been really exciting. It's very new and it's challenging and it's kind of like a rocky road, and there's a lot of people that don't know how to negotiate the space. But long
Mm-hmm.
term, it's here to stay, and it's really fun to be kind of on the ground level and to see people making mistakes and making the mistakes yourself, but also just kind of trusting your process and trusting the journey of like, okay, this is a new thing, like let's get into it, like let's have some fun, and
Yeah.
let's make some art.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. I know that the NFT space is it's so broad. Like there's so many different things within it. There's sports memorabilia. There's art. There's photography. There's everything you could really even think of. Any visual medium. There's even like you can. I think there's like songs and stuff now.
Hmm.
I don't really know exactly. I haven't looked too much into it in the past like month. There was this one time when I went. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Not necessarily I'm gonna buy all of these NFTs, but this is really just the way that the NFT space has just kind of come to the forefront of the conversation and is still relevant and here. Like you were saying, is here to stay. So I love that you're testing the waters and seeing what it's like. I'm excited to hear how that goes and just kind of hear what the journey of that piece is, because obviously it can go from one person to another, and that's just like a really cool thing about NFTs. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm excited for you to I mean for you to see what that looks
I
like,
know.
because I know that you're probably like, what the heck is gonna
Like,
happen? I'm
oh.
not too. You're like, oh, I'm just taking a shot in the dark, man. And we're throwing a dart and seeing if it sticks and pinning the tail on the donkey and all those things. Trying to see exactly what works. So that's pretty cool. And well, I mean, what went into you selecting that one photo? Was it just like the sense of regality that guy had? I mean, I feel like when you're choosing an NFT, you're like, I gotta decide on the perfect one. Like you probably have a ton. You have a ton of photos that are great, but for you personally, you probably have like a vault where you're like, these are my prized possessions, and these are the ones that I would feel comfortable making as an NFT. So what like led you to selecting that one, the king of What was the town called?
Nogales.
Nogales. What made you want to select that one? I mean, you kind of went over it a little bit, but just to hear again.
The selection process is always difficult. I mean, it's in the journalism world, in the photojournalism world, they call culling your photos killing babies, because when you're a photographer, like everything is your baby. But like, what's the one photograph you couldn't live without? And when I was taking that shot and doing a lot of traveling to Nogales, Sonora, it was just a magical moment, and I knew, like, in camera what that was going to look like even before I touched it in post-production. I just knew that story was going to be powerful and impactful and mysterious and accurate, but also, like, it's a very dear photo to me because of the time, how beautiful it is, and how beautiful that particular border community is to me. It just holds a really special place in my heart. And fortunately, I've been linking with a bunch of folks who are really revitalizing both sides of the border and bringing art to the forefront, and being able to link with them a little bit on Instagram, and really looking forward to expanding that relationship. I wanted this photograph because in my eyes, it's one of the most perfect photographs I've been able to grab. And I wanted to be able to tell a beautiful story of a community that I feel is largely misrepresented. And it's always been very welcoming and beautiful to me. And that photograph tells that story to me. So when I grabbed it and I knew that I was going to get into the NFT space, at least to try the one-on-one, like not a full series, I was like, oh, this is the winner. Like, just hands down. I can't do any better than this at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully you do better. I mean,
yeah, always.
I hope that you continue to grow. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, David, it's been a great talk,
Absolutely.
a great conversation with you. I really, have learned a lot from you. I always try to learn something new from the people that I talk to, but just taking the road less traveled, the first thing that we talked about is I think really what I'm gonna be left with today, because I mean it's just such an easy thing to do. Like, it's hard to break away from your normal routine or like your normal route that you might take, but it's such an easy thing to do. And I really think that you've captured taking the road less traveled in a beautiful way. And I'm really excited to see how you take it even further, and how you, take that idea and run with it, just like with other people and with other photographers. So yeah, I think that's what I'm going to be left with today, and what I learned from this conversation. So it's been a great talk, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Donovan. It's been great to talk with you, and really to vocalize, what some of my focuses are, and hoping to grow a community. And again, with, the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing, it's about growing that, sense of inspiration, making sure that artists get out there and speak their truth, and, love themselves, and then love what's outside of them, and taking that road less traveled, and making sure that, you're living a life fulfilled.
Yeah. There you go, living a life fulfilled. That's another thing I'll be left with. You just keep dropping these little nuggets of knowledge. So let's stop before my mind blows up. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, David, it's been such a great time.
For sure. Thanks, man.
I'm gonna link your socials below. It's DJ Del Grande on Facebook. His IG is DJ_Del_Grande, and his Twitter is Slow Zone. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it was one of my graffiti names from back in the day. So it's Sloss1,
Sick.
like SLOSONE.
Sloss1.
Yeah.
Sick, man. That's I like that. That's pretty sick.
And that's a whole other story.
That's
a whole nother podcast.
It's like, dang, yeah. I'm gonna have to get you on a part 2 someday after. Yeah.
Dude,
that's something I want to do, is actually bring people back on.
Yeah, those follow-ups, man. Those are like follow-ups are clutch. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, you guys might be seeing David on the podcast again, sometime in the future. So, so yeah, I'm excited to see what you do with Grande Publishing and with this podcast that you're continuing. Excited to see you get some more interviews on there, or get start that process. Again, it's called Streets Photog Podcast, and I'll link that in the description as well. just you can find everything below, as well as whenever you come out with that book, I will be putting that into the description as well. As long as you remind me,
Yeah, for
I'll
sure.
put a note. But
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, so yeah, David, it was great having you on here. Thank you so much for being here and coming on. It was great having you. Everybody listening, keep on telling your story. Don't ever give up. I'm excited to see who we have on the podcast in 2 weeks, because that's when I'm posting them. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you soon. Have a great one, and keep on telling your story.